Hello all, and this is going to be a discussion on Hegelian ethics in a kind of fun and digestible way, I suppose, since the Super Bowl was just this last weekend, team sports as a way of making Hegel's political project really as just a digestible analogous way that I thought would be fun. But to start off, I wanted to, of course, give a short little rundown on what Hegel's ethics and philosophy are and what they are in a sort of objective sense. And so, of course, with his idea of freedom, he's asking, what is the common good life within the philosophy of right, or what is, right beyond just subjectivity in a sort of objective way. And so he wants to fully grasp the idea of freedom beyond the state of arbitrariness. So, most often we see culturally today, of course, freedom, ends really with the state of arbitrariness that Hegel talks about here, where you just have, determined situations and choices to make. For Hegel, this is simply the start. This is simply the immediacy of the first stage of abstract right within an immediate basic need basis. So, things like shelter and food, these are not, fleshed out or even property to some extent in a classical liberal sense. These are simply our basic wants and needs and decision making, and Hegel wants to flesh out and go, to the heights of human reason in that sort of romantic fashion in his time. And so he's looking at the self-awareness of the inner subjectivity within property ownership in its immediacy. And so I think this is a way to introduce how, within team sports, emphasis on team, of course, we'll get more to that later, you have a set group of individuals, and this can, apply beyond just, sports in general. Think of, group projects, which are pretty common in school, or, if you have collaborative efforts in life. You have the inner, subject, or the individual, if you will, within a team with your own wants, needs, suppositions, etc. And so you're trying to collaborate towards, the universal of, the goal, or for Hegel in his philosophy, the good life, instead of just, your particulars as a subject, moving towards the team goal or the good life or the common good. And so this is analogous to, team effort, results, paying off in that sort of universal objective awareness towards a goal. And so the notion of the good as such in the world versus the self-realization that I just mentioned of the good is to be overcome in Hegel's philosophy towards a sort of synthesis within the dialectic, certainly, but within his ethical thinking, you have your wants on a subjective basis, coming at odds with mutual recognition of others. And so the state for Hegel is the concrete of the project of politics, rights and guarantees, or roles for players, in my analogy, to play in mutual recognition from the rationality of the state. And so just like how you would follow the rules within a game or within a team effort, you have this notion of the good which is made concrete within the state, or in this case within the team effort. And so the game plan, if you will, you always have sort of an instructive basis for how the team's efforts can come to fruition. So the game plan is the concretization of the Hegelian state, of the essence of freedom within the project of history and its participation, such as our duties in civil society for Hegel. And this, of course, is similar, I would say, towards a team effort in team sports, where you have these individuals who mutually recognize each other and can game plan and craft a sort of strategy using the particulars of your team or those individuals. And so family, civic community, or the state, which is the fullest manifest for Hegel in that, is similar to a player recognizing his role within the team and having his sort of self-recognition. And so they're mutually arrived by the team towards a sort of successful strategy or game plan by that team. And so the community for Hegel is, the individuals in their discovery of the good, just as how, a team that's, kind of coming together, practicing, learning about each other, has that same sort of capacity, I would say. And so, the team practices to arrive at a formalization of the structure of the team or the state. And so what is the free will that wills freely and is not in the state of arbitrariness is, of course, what the essence of Hegelian ethics is trying to get at. And so the individualization then is in immediacy of determined choice outcomes, as we've mentioned prior with Hegel. And so the mutual recognition amongst citizens, or in this case teammates, become embodied and concretized within that game plan effort. And so this is, of course, a way of looking at Hegelian ethics and his theory of the state, in a culturally significant way. As even if you were in primary school, you likely had team sports or something similar to that, where you realize that the biggest guy on the team should probably be center, or the strongest guy, like in basketball, he should probably be the one under the basket, trying to retrieve missed shots, finishing, and scoring. Just as, whoever the best shot is, if you were talking about football or soccer in America, whoever has, high accuracy on goal probably should be the striker role. And so you kind of discover through that mutual recognition between each other what your role actually would be in a successful team effort of ultimately reacting to, another team's recognition or another state's recognition. But I did want to also part with, somewhat of a critique within the scene itself. And of course this isn't meant, in malice. This is, simply offering an alternative in what I think is a more developed way of thinking and going about your life in an ethical way in today's world. And this could be exemplified within the bodybuilding, the right-wing bodybuilding community, if you will. While I think that there is a lot of good elements to this, bodybuilding really is a sort of an effort within the self. I don't believe that it should be seen as an ends, if you will, that many other people in the scene would probably argue, or perhaps haven't really thought about in such a way yet. And so you could consider that as sort of training for the team effort, of course, which is necessary. But bodybuilding as a whole isn't sufficient towards the team orientation of what a political project or statecraft is. You could have a group of guys lifting together, but ultimately, your own recognition within your own body and that sort of phenomenological basis, if you will, of you have to do this for yourself. And I think that there is a sort of echo, if you will, towards conservatism and libertarianism, especially in America. The classic cliche of picking yourself up by the bootstraps. Nobody can make you step into the gym. You have to realize that good within yourself. You're that particular good, and nobody can take that from you. And there is a lot of empowerment that comes with that, but I don't believe that it is an ends. I believe that it is towards the greater team effort. To be more concise here, I would say training to that capacity on an individual basis is to be still within arbitrariness, much like liberal theory is in today's world, where you just have these determined choices to make, and your sort of rights within a liberal subject. I think that is similar to how the popularity within the right-wing bodybuilding community. But I don't believe that this is the ends of it. I think that this is only the starting step, much like in Hegel's ethical philosophy here. Just as how Hegel in his science of logic sees sensory output and empiricism really as just the starting point. I think that could be said in this analogy for how training isn't an ends in and of itself. But I do think that one of the things that is a great quality with that culturally, or at least within the scene culturally, if you will, exemplifies this sort of energy or concern about what one is to do ethically or morally in the current world, especially if you don't have mutual recognition within institutions. We don't really know or understand our roles in this team effort that we find ourselves in, or what the team really even represents for a sort of common good. Each member of a squad, if you will, in that team effort has their own subjective goals that they need to achieve, similar to that of what we were talking about earlier, towards your own self-sufficiency. And by mutually recognizing each one of us has those sort of objectives in our subjectivity, we push towards the common good, the team effort, the Hegelian state. And so if we were going to continue with his ethical philosophy of negation, of wrong towards the right, there's the unintended wrongs, if you will, and those are mistakes and are seen as such within Hegelian philosophy as more of a minor inconvenience, really, of hurting others in a way that you didn't really see it as malicious, perhaps, where something like crime or not recognizing some form of property, if you will, that the Hegelian state would recognize, then there comes the negation of the wrong with the right. Just like when there is mistakes within the team effort, there's quite often individual mistakes that require the help of not just simply who the mistaken was, but a team effort to get you out of that mess. And so another way to go about it is, of course, within Hegel's philosophy, which of course could be critiqued in how open the dialectic really is for interpretation in many regards, and you can see that with the politics in his aftermath. There's the young Hegelians, there's the right Hegelians. This sort of open interpretation, if you will, could be seen again within his ethics here. And I think the interesting analogy to go with that is within negation of wrong, is how it's constantly in an interactive process. There's constantly wrong doings in the world, or mistakes that need to be negated, just as within gameplay of a team effort, adjustments are made, and so one self-realizes or changes their objectives within that sort of capacity of reaction towards conflicting game plans. In a similar way of two competing teams against each other, one's role could be heightened in one matchup and totally different in another matchup for the common good. And I think that is similar to how Hegel develops his ethics and politics here, insofar that there's constant need and retaliation against the wrong negation with the good in that sort of capacity. It can apply, of course, to, I believe, all facets of life within a group project. And so, simply put, just as how Hegel's dialect turns from intersubjectivity towards an actual common good and objectivity of freedom. And so property, or the recognition of your spot within a team, is the sort of starting point towards the concretization of justice within a state or the team goal. And so, for Hegel, of course, there's a stark contrast of the state trying to ensure the recognition of normative standards within reason within a populace or a community, in that similar sort of fashion towards a team game plan. You might not have the individual subjective accolades, if you will, that come with it. Just as there's plenty of times within commercial sports, if you will, and that's another. I don't want to browbeat so much on how there's plenty of critiques, of course, with the cultural significance or the bread and circus, if you will, of team sports and modernity. But nonetheless, I do think that it's still apt to consider, on a sort of lower scale. I don't want to get into how wokeness or something has taken over sports. I think that's kind of a given if you are visiting this channel. But that doesn't take away from a group of kids putting together a team effort in sport, or an amateur basis, if you will. I still think it applies here. And so, similarly, when you have a selfish player who's, just going for their own sort of individual accolades, then, they need to be reprehended for the public good or the good of the team, if you will. And so, that is how you would ultimately critique most of the libertarian arguments or thinking amongst liberals today, who, as long as there's no harm done between, two consenting people, then, why should the state intervene? When if the state, sees itself in actuality of, what the common good is within the reason of those people, and it intervenes with that, common good, just as it could intervene with a team's chemistry or even the results for the team, then one should be punished. One should be hopefully corrected in their selfishness. And so, simply put, I think that's the same way as how you would fix a team's chemistry or issues, in a similar way to the way Hegel would see with the state trying to preserve the public good or exemplify it. This, of course, is the contrast towards rights under liberalism, which are at odds with each other, and instead you go towards the team effort of a social project of mutual recognition towards the concretization of our common good and freedom, to be blunt. So yeah, this video is just a quick one to really, I think it would serve well to use as a way to introduce people to different ways of thinking within Hegel's ethics in a sort of fun way that's easy to understand. But yeah, this is just to wrap up here. I think I'm gonna come back with you guys with another Wittgenstein video on his logical investigation soon. But yeah, I just wanted to talk to you guys and share some quick thoughts that I had while enjoying the game over the weekend. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.